Today we are going to be discussing just a modern miracle, for lack of a better term. Just this inspirational camera with just such pristine design that has yet to been rivaled. Obviously, I'm talking about the Canon T50. Oh boy, just what a real treat to any real 35mm SLR lover. This is just the top of the bucket list. This is just pristine design and functionality. There's so much to talk about here. This is just the perfect camera. And I'm joking entirely. This thing's a piece of garbage. Some people like it. Again, it just goes back to your preference, and you can make this work for you. They usually never work because they take AA batteries, and for whatever reason, they thought, let's do that. Let's do AA batteries, and then make sure that the metal contact in the bottom is just plastically fused right there. So that'll be fine. And then the hinge is also a nice plastic. So what would happen is these batteries would, go bad because people just don't know how to change batteries. And then they would begin to corrode. And then they would corrode the contact and then break that off, or they'd also break off the hinge so you just couldn't close it. And now you just have a brick, essentially. A nice paperweight. Today we're actually not discussing this. They do have something very helpful about them, and that would be the prism. Okay, Alex, all cameras have prisms. Yes, dear viewer, you are correct. But this is a very cheap camera to find because they never work, and people will always try and just give them away for parts. I got this in a big pack of a bunch of cameras and stuff, and the guy was like, "Oh yeah, it works totally fine." I had to kind of tape a paper clip, which is what I just threw away. I had to tape a paper clip to it so it'll still work. And he was right. It'll work, but why? But why? Why would I do that to myself? There's really not much you can do here. You have just a program. You got the battery check, which is just this really annoying little ding, and then you have a self timer. There's a little frame counter here, ASA dial there, and that's literally it. There's nothing to this camera. This has a copal shutter situation, which it's not necessarily a copal shutter, but it's the same design. It's not the cloth. So I think this might have been the first SLR that Canon produced that employed this shutter system, but I will look into that and I will post whether or not that is correct right here. Okay, so why am I showing you this? Because we're not actually talking about it. What we are talking about is this. This is a plastic K1000. This is one of the 4 or 5 that came in. And this has a very common issue. What is that issue? Well, let me explain it to you by showing you. You might not be able to see through there. Let me grab my little light here and illuminate the subject. But if you look through there, you can see there's quite a bit of mold going on in that prism. Basically what that is with these newer plastic ones, it's very common that the prism would deteriorate and mold over. And now it doesn't really affect your image. If I was to not replace this and take a picture, it's not going to do anything because it has no effect on the film itself. But it's also really hard to frame things or to see what you're taking a picture of when you look through and it's just black. So we're going to replace that, which is why we have this. This is the same size prism as something like an AE1, I believe also an AE1 program, but regardless, this prism and this prism are relatively interchangeable for something that's a very common issue here and something that is not going to ever work again. Shit, why not? So first off, what we're going to do is we'll be taking this bad boy apart, and this is one of the most gratifying experiences because we're not really worried about keeping it together. The interesting thing to note is that the T50 is essentially, how I've seen it, is basically an A1 program without the manual shutter speed control and with a motor in it. And I don't know, in the realm of all of the bizarre things I find interesting, that's definitely up there. Because they basically took the design that was working fairly well, modified it slightly, and made a pretty good consumer camera. This would be like a pretty adequate point and shoot kind of thing, and in my mind at least. If you can find one that has, you know, not been completely destroyed, like I'm about to do to this one, and it has like a working battery compartment and all those things, it's a pretty decent little camera, so long as you know what you're using it for. But more often than not, these just have not aged well. And they use like this really cheap feeling plastic, and I'm not a huge fan of plastic cameras. I just would prefer metal, but that's me. Some people like this. It looks like the 90s, 80s pretending to be 90s that's pretending to be like 2030, you know, a weird faux futurism. But so this comes off just like it would on an A1 program, and then it reveals this little section here. And then we're going to take these two screws out. We're just trying to get the top off of this so we can access the prism, and we'll pull the prism out and use that. I've actually fixed a couple T50s that like weren't functioning properly, and I've never felt like I've wasted more time in my life. Like, I've done a lot of dumb things just to like kind of fill time, but fixing a T50 was one of the worst. And then the other thing, I really don't know how reliable the electronics are. Like, putting a lens on here and just choosing program, I don't think that it gives you like the most accurate exposure. I don't think it'll like, I don't know. I've not really spent too much time trying to shoot one. I was considering shooting a roll through this, but I don't have film that I really want to waste that badly, so I decided against it. This should be good. Yeah. Well, okay. Most of the time, I usually just like tear this off, but for the sake of the viewers, I will try and do this the correct way, the less violent way, if I can think how to do that. I'm about 30 seconds away from just ripping it off, but there we go. Tally ho. Just like that. And there's going to be a lot of contacts. Now, here's the thing. As you'll notice, the board sits like directly over the prism, and you're thinking, oh no, the board, it's sitting over the prism. You need the prism, but you can't destroy the board. This is just precious. This is just, oh no, what are you doing? No. Oh no. Oh man. Shucks. Well, I guess I'll just have to use the prism now. Oh, bummer. Okay, just like that. All good to go. Ready to repair. Perfect. And of course we have the prism. So as you can see, this is totally clean, totally fine. And we will just hold on to this until we get the K1000 top off and just swap them real quick. So hold off for that.